Brought to you by BedroomBattlefields.com, this is the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. 3D printed terrain might be trendy right now, but let's not forget about MDF. And far from being an outdated technology, there's some really cool new innovations happening in that space right now, as I found out on a recent visit to Warbases. Warbases are a bit of an institution in this hobby, and last week I managed to get a wee look around their HQ, which is pretty local to me. Afterwards I sat down with production manager Glenn to discuss their buildings, their miniature range and the hobby in general. I started off by asking him his thoughts on some common misconceptions around the role of terrain on the tabletop.
Putting too much terrain on that means that the table's just simply not playable.
Mm-hmm.
There is a fine line, there's a fine balance between having your table too sparse that you can just walk straight across it versus something that's so tight and compact that the narrative's upset and the experience is impeded by having too much on there. Different rule sets play different ways and different levels of terrain, whether it's bushes or trees or swamps or forests, they can impact your movement, and that impact of your movement, if there's too much in there, can really impact your game. It can impact your experience, and can take away from the enjoyment of the game, can take away from things like your combat as well. We all play toy soldiers to battle them, to fight, and if there's too much or too little terrain on it, that can seriously impact that narrative, that story, that experience, that adventure.
You've kind of answered a chunk of this already, but like if you think about pure aesthetics versus that practicality or playability, I mean, I suppose this isn't just about the whole table, but individual pieces, I guess, the way they're designed and stuff like that as well, like that must go into a lot of what you do in the planning stages of putting a piece of terrain together.
Yeah, so for us in terms of designing buildings, all of our buildings are shelves. They are 4 walls. We don't put any interior into them because you start to put interior into them and then you're narrowing the amount of space within the building. But yeah, we take into account the fact that people are playing with them as a game. And there are little things, there's small things, heights of doors, widths of doors. I was working on a product just this morning which has an alley cut through, and my initial design wouldn't actually allow me a 25mm 1-inch base figure to be able to get down the alleyway. And being for 28mm products that we're designing, your 25mm base is kind of your industry standard, so to speak. And if I can't design a product that the figure can get down the alleyway, then that alleyway is redundant. It's useless. Aesthetically, it looks really nice, but it doesn't actually work for playing, for games, for being able to move an individual figure or a unit from the front of a house to the back of a house through an alleyway. So that had to be reworked so that it was widened so that a 25mm figure, 25mm based 28mm figure can fit through. So we take into account a lot of those things. Windows are designed for set heights so that figures can shoot out of them, that they're not too tall or they're not too low, that the figure is looking out of the window rather than looking under it or trying to peer over it. And we take all those kind of things into account when we're designing products for gaming purposes.
The last time I was here, when we looked at like the buildings you were making, I mean, from what I remember, everything was the MDF just in its like wooden form, like its uncoloured form, and now you're just showing me there the way you're doing a lot of stuff now. It's coming pre-coloured or pre-painted, whatever the term is. Like, could you tell us a wee bit more about that?
Yeah, so you were last here at the end of 2019, and in 2020, post-COVID, myself and Martin had a conversation and a discussion about what would the feasibility be around creating MDF kits as a colour printed option, as an option that we can sell to the customer, something that we refer to it now as raw MDF, so uncoloured, unpainted MDF. We refer to that as raw. And we wondered, is there a means to be able to create this raw kit and at the same time have the same cut file that we can then colour print onto? And we spent about 6 months researching machinery and came to a conclusion with the machine that we've now purchased, that we can print in UV cure in one process directly onto MDF. It's taken us 4 years to refine that process. We spent a lot of time researching how to spray our MDF white, because it needs to be white first. It can't be direct from colour onto the raw MDF because there's so much variation in the MDF. So we researched, can we find white MDF? We actually got to the point where we thought we had a product, and it was a high density card that came to us white, and we discovered that we could print it, we could cut onto it, and we could print onto it. But we discovered that if you took a wet wipe to it, it removed the ink. And we kind of came to the conclusion that, well, you can't cut and print onto something that you can just rub off with a wet wipe, a baby wipe, or a makeup wipe or something. And we were genuinely at the point where we thought we could maybe look at releasing a product, and this must have been around about 2022 at the time. The whole thing was kiboshed, and we canned it. And it wasn't until the end of 2024 mid-2024 where we refined the process to a point where we could actually produce a product that we could retail. And at the end of 2024, we went live with our first set of colour printed buildings, which was a set of 6 World War II designed pillboxes. Now moving through 2025, a lot of our work is focused on colour printing buildings, whether that is going back through our back catalogue. So a lot of our Western kits were rescaled to be colour printed. So we've done a lot of work with that, a lot of work with our Border Reaver range, but we've also been working on development of new products as well. So we released last month a set of 6 medieval style dark age thatched buildings for rule sets like Saga, or Pillage, but they can also be used for kind of any generic fantasy. So a lot of our development, a lot of our time, a lot of our process is currently working around designing colour printed kits under our table ready terrain range, with the idea being that you can just buy it, build it, put it on a table and play. You don't need to do anything else with it. You don't have to go through all the time and the effort of building it and painting it. And if you want to, you can add things like teddy bear fur to the thatched roofs to give you that 3D element to the building. But if you're just looking at something that you want to build and play, because we know that a large chunk of our customer base, the hardest thing is having to sit and build a kit and then paint it, because MDF, it's big, it's bulky, and to be able to just build it, put it down on a table and play it, it's so much quicker. The process is so much faster for a customer. I'm building prototype buildings in 10 or 15 minutes that I can then have on the table in an hour and playing a game. If I was to sit and paint every single brick or board of wood on something, it would take a lot longer. So that's where we're going with things at the moment. We're spending a lot of time developing new products around the colour printed range. I've got, I think, our next 18-month schedule drafted up on what we're looking to develop and what we're looking to work on. And I've started the ball rolling on that already. I'm working on a range that, I don't know when this goes live, but I know that I've got a range that's coming out next week, and I've got another range coming out 2 weeks after that. So I've got another 16 buildings coming out in the next month.
I mean, it's very much catering to the gamer like this, like you're saying, very quick table ready process, but you still get a lot of folk that are very much more in the hobbyist camp who still want to get the what was it you called it when it's uncoloured?
So we call it raw. We refer to it as raw MDF now.
So that maybe folks still want to do their own thing with the raw material.
We still see just as many sales for raw MDF as we did pre-development of our coloured kits. That hasn't fluctuated. It's not been a huge transition. We still have all the raw kits available on our website, and it's still products that we're developing at the moment. So last month, we released a range of Mediterranean buildings designed for either the Med through World War II or through the Napoleonic era. So we still develop raw MDF kits. We still develop those. We still work on those. Between myself and Martin, we're still currently working on projects we still have in the pipeline. The idea is going to be, hopefully moving forward, that we can release the same kit as a raw kit, and we can release the same kit as a colour printed kit at the same time. So the customer still has that idea that they can, if they want to buy something and just put it on the table and play, they can pay for that printed option. But if they're wanting to spend the time to be able to develop their own style, and for a hobbyist that enjoys that aspect of building a kit and painting it and adding extra details, if you want to put interiors in or teddy bear fur for the thatched roof, then we still have that option for customers. We're not totally removing that option. It's that we're going to be moving along side by side with both of those. So again, most of the kits that I'm working on over the next 18 months in colour printed MDF will also be available to customers in raw MDF. We're not doing away with that. It's just that we're developing it at the same time now. So effectively, I'm developing basically twice as many products because you have two options for each one.
What's the process like when you have an idea or a request for a building? Like, what's the process from taking that through design to basically having it in your hand?
So from design, from thought, from concept through to having in our hand can vary depending on product, can vary depending upon time frame or deadlines, or if you're working towards a goal. So I've made a start now on the products that I intend to release next year at Salute in April, and I intend to release at the UK Games Expo at the end of May and into June. So I'm working on those nearly 12 months in advance. One part to give me time because I'm juggling so many products, but one part that I can spend the time that's needed to be able to develop it properly, to come to a product that I'm happy with. Our artwork for our colour printed kits is done externally. It's not done in-house. We have a designer that works with us, so it's allowing her enough time to be able to sit and do briefs and chat with her about it and what's happening. So we spend a lot of time developing products, and really it all comes back down to is that deadline thing. It's that, when do we have to have it out for? Because I can pick up a project and drop a project. I'm spinning so many plates in here that I don't know what I'm coming in and doing tomorrow morning or next week or next month, because something comes to my attention and I have to drop other jobs to pick one up. But I mean, from concept through to a finished product that we then retail can be anything from a couple of weeks to a couple of months to, like I said, I'm looking at things for next year. So you're talking 12 months plus. I don't like to try and rush myself through things, because then you cut corners, you make mistakes. But we schedule in what we're working on, so I know what's happening for the next 12 or 18 or 24 months. So I know what I'm wanting to work on. I know what I'm aiming to have at Salute in 2026 and Salute in 2027, and they're already on a whiteboard that we work through. So from concept through to a finished product can vary wildly. I've managed to put a few buildings together in the space of a week or two, and other buildings have taken months. And this whole process to be able to get to colour printed kits has taken 4 years.
So is that a lot of work just at the computer with the software?
A lot of it's just sitting at a computer. A lot of it's sitting with software. A lot of it is designing a kit and then prototyping it and finding what works and what breaks needs fixed. And when you fix something, it's whether you break something else in the process. So one of the kits that I'm working on at the moment, I think I'm on version 4 or version 5, because every time I fixed something, I broke something else. And it's copying and pasting the wrong piece. when you're working on a computer. But yeah, a lot of it is just the working through a prototype stage. It's sitting at a computer. It's doing the design work on a computer and then running it through a laser and taking the time to sit and build each piece individually and making sure that everything is perfect. And I've been doing that now for the last 10, 12 years. And it gets to the point where you think you're starting to get the gist of it. And you start to think, I can design this kit and I know it's going to work first time. And you design it and you build it and it's totally wrong. I designed something last week. I thought I had it right. I was sat at home brushing my teeth on a Tuesday night. And brushing my teeth on a Tuesday night to go to bed, I go, hang on a minute, that bit's not going to work. And I'm sat there at home on a Tuesday night going, oh, hang on a minute, I'm going to have to remember that tomorrow morning so that I can sit down on my computer and fix it first thing. And that happened just last week before. So, yeah, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of processes, it's a lot of sitting and working at a computer and just methodically going through the same process every time for every building to make sure that everything's right, to make sure that everything's good. It takes me forever.
Is there any particular building or piece that you had the most fun with, that was the most memorable for you?
For me, we have a corner saloon from our Caxus Creek Old West range. And the corner design on it, it's a 3-story kit with a balcony, and that took me forever to be able to work through. There's so many angles in it, and it was trying to work out how to do connections and tabs and where should you design this and where should you design that, and it was a horrible kit, but I was so happy when I had it done because it was so rewarding to be able. I know what I wanted to achieve in my head, and to be able to finally get it physically there, sat on my desk in front of me, and it worked. I must have gone through 8 or 10 or 12 prototype versions, which didn't work. Bits were the wrong size, the tabs were in the wrong place, I'd put the wrong bit here, I'd moved the wrong bit there. And that kit for me was probably the most rewarding kit to finally have sat in front of me on my desk and it worked. That was the one that I was the most happiest about. There's other stuff since there that are maybe a little bit more intricate that I've worked on, but that is the one that I still look back at and go, I'm really glad that works, because once that got redesigned in colour, it's a significant statement piece on a corner of a table, and it's one that I'm so happy with.
We talked a bit before we started recording. You were showing me some of the Bifrost miniatures. Like, how long have you ran that miniatures range alongside all the terrain?
So Bifrost Miniatures is our 28mm fantasy range. It is quite an extensive range now. I think it's around 140 codes, but we have another 30 in development at the moment. But the grand plan for that was in 2020, we were going to release the first set of figures at Salute in April. And due to COVID, we had to mothball that. So we done a soft launch instead, the summer of 2020, with, I think it was, I want to say it was something like 6 hero figures and some goblins and some toadmen. And I think it was only maybe 10 or 12 codes of figures to start off with. But that's always been one of Martin's pet projects. So going back to the 80s, Martin used to play Redbox D&D. And when he played Redbox D&D, he loved that. He was totally into that. And he always had this idea when we started Warbases that he wanted to do a fantasy miniatures range. He wanted to relive that 80s childhood Redbox. It's been Martin's pet project for a few years, and it's one that I've taken over the last couple of years now and developed myself. And we work with 3 or 4 really talented sculptors, a mix of both 3D and traditional green stuff kind of sculptors. And it now has become quite an extensive range. We now have 18 hero figures. I think it's approximately a dozen NPC or scenic type codes, and then the remainder is all your dungeon denizens. So we've got anything from giant rats and giant beetles through to a mind flayer type figure, skeletons, goblins. We've got a troll, we've got giants, there's even a dragon now as well. We've got a giant spider. There's some absolutely phenomenal figures in there. We've even gone down the route of a fantasy style dinosaur with a howdah attached to the back of it. It's a fantastic range. It's so much fun. It's a pet project. It's one that we have a lot of fun with. We don't put a lot of pressure on ourselves with it. It's one that we create figures for ourselves that we then sell, rather than looking at what customers might want, what customers are short on, or we don't look at what's not out there and try and fill those holes. It's more of a conversation of what would we like to see developed. Recently, one of our sculptors approached us with some figures that were a personal project of his own, and he admitted that he doesn't have the time to hand to be able to get them moulded up and get them into production and get them painted. And he offered them up to us, and we took them off his hand, and there's some beautiful, beautiful figures in there. We've got some kind of Langschneck type swordsmen and spearmen and men with pole arms, and there's some beautiful dwarf figures in there, and there's so much character involved in them. They're nice big chunky dwarven poses. There really is an old school vibe to them, and our painter just sent us the painted figures back last week, and they're beautiful, they're phenomenal, and I'm really looking forward to those getting out, because they should be out in September, hopefully. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I think to date they're some of the nicest figures that we've got in that range.
Yeah, it's a great looking range. I had the is it the Etin, the two-headed giant? I had that on my Christmas list. Wife never got me it, so it's still sitting there.
No, it's the Etin's fantastic. So again, that came from one of our 3D sculptors. And it's a really good, hefty, chunky metal multi-part kit, and there feels like there's a bit of presence about it. There's a bit of substance to it, and there's so much character involved in it. There's one head arguing with the other. It's such a fantastic pose. Such a dynamic figure. The 3D sculptor that we work in, he loves these dynamic action type poses. And he's so talented and he's so capable of what he does, and we have to kind of rein him back in, because whilst he's working on these amazing dynamic poses, we also have to remind him that we need to be able to cast them as well. They need to fit into a mold, they need to be castable, and he works with us fantastically, and he's amazing. And the Etin is one of those figures that he done, and it's brilliant. I love it.
What are some of your favourite games?
To me personally, I personally don't have an awful lot of time to game, unfortunately. This being my job, it unfortunately kind of fell away a little bit from being my hobby. And I now have a 16-month-old daughter who takes up a lot of my time. But I still spend a lot of time watching D&D. I watch a couple of D&D YouTube series, and a lot of our guys here at Warbases, they've just got into Kings of War, and I'm working on developing a human army out of whatever I had lying around the house already. So I'm optimistic that I can maybe try and actually get a game or two of that in. I do quite like the old Western kind of games, so I do play a little bit of Dead Man's Hand now and again. And I've played a little bit of the Two Fat Lardies rule set, What a Cowboy. So I enjoy quite a lot of Western kind of shootouts. I actually owned for a brief period of time our Black Sheep miniature line of figures. That was mine before I passed it on to Martin last year. And I spent a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of fun developing those Black Sheep Western figures. So there's banditos and cowboys and bank robbers, and I had a lot of fun with that purely because I quite enjoyed playing likes of Dead Man's Hand.
Cryovolcano, a solo scenario that could be played with any sci-fi skirmish rule set and miniatures, is now available on the Bedroom Battlefields Patreon. It was originally published in Miniature Wargames magazine, and you'll now find everything you need to play it, along with a whole host of additional bonus content, over at patreon.com/bedroombattlefields. That's patreon.com/bedroombattlefields. And now back to the show. So I just getting wrapped up. Like I'm away for my tea soon at the Red Lion. Looks like you've got a Red Lion on the store, like a building, but it says it's like out of soap opera. I don't know if it's meant to be like the Coronation Street pub or.
We've been developing a range of red brick terrace style houses for early 1900s through to kind of post World War II conflicts, and they are based a little bit off of likes of Coronation Street, that sort of thing. So there's likes of a pub and a store, and there's a little post office, and there's a house with a cut through, and that's the next project. So that's the one that's going to be coming out in the next week or two. So there's 6 buildings for that range. That's part of our colour printed range from our table ready terrain line. So yeah, we're spending a lot of time developing that up, and yeah, we're having a lot of fun with that. There's going to be a small amount of customization available to customers for that as well. So it's been designed that we can change the colour of the doors and the windows, and the signs can change, so customers can have their own options for shop signs. So it's not just a set product. You can change the name of the pub, or you can have the shop, and we're going to sell it as a standard as a greengrocer. But customers can have it as a butcher's or a baker's or as fishmongers. And it'll be the same for the post office building as well. We'll have that kind of customizational ability for customers. It's a big thing that we can do with that colour printed range, because it's designed in-house with an external. We can do that sort of stuff, that simple basic stuff that can all be done here with us.
Necromunda on Coronation Street, imagine that.
Absolutely, that'd be hilariously good.
Thank you very much, Glenn, really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
Where should the listener go to check out Warbases range?
So if you check out www.warbases.co.uk, that'll send you straight to our website. You can also find us on Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and we are in the early stages of development of our own YouTube channel as well.
Massive thanks to Glenn for the chat, and to the whole Warbases team for letting me come down and having a wee look around our workshop. And Glenn very kindly gave me that Eton miniature too, which was a lovely gesture. I said to him I wasn't angling at that by telling him a sob story about not getting it for Christmas. So thank you very much, Glenn. The Eton is already cleaned up and built and based, so I'm just about to put some undercoat on it and then I'll get to work. And speaking of that Bifrost miniatures range, like I was, after we finished recording, I was getting a wee look round, and it was great to see, they're all in blister packs, which is something that I really love. And the range itself, it's quite reminiscent of the Foundry stuff as well. Like if you go down to bring out your lead at Foundry, and they've got that brilliant shop all these blister packs. So I love looking at blister packs, and you get a wee peek at what's inside and the potential that's in there. So yeah, looking around these miniatures, Glenn was saying to me, they've got haggis miniatures. So he was saying that these are some of their best-selling miniatures. It's a bit of a joke, he was saying, but they'd created these in it. If you're familiar here in the UK with the Beano comics with Dennis the Menace and his dog Gnasher, I think he was saying that these haggis miniatures are kind of a subtle nod to Gnasher, but they've got tusks as well. So he was saying it was a bit of fun, but it's ended up selling really well for them. So you could get these haggis, I think they're individually based, or you could get the haggis Nado, which is like a big swarm of them. So it already had ideas spinning in my head about like, could I make some sort of haggis based Blood Bowl team? Not that I need a new project right now, but it's definitely something that did appeal to me. So I'll see how I'll let that sit for a wee while and see how it goes. But moving on from things that I potentially could do in the future to things that I actually am doing right now, I mentioned that Eton is all built, ready to prime. I've also got my Oathsworn warband on the go, so it's hares and rabbits. There's 5 of those, and I've painted 2 of them at the moment. Really, really enjoying those. I always speak very highly of them. They're a joy to paint, nice big areas, and detail without overdoing it. So I really like the way that they handle the paint, even for a very limited painter like myself. They seem to come up very well. So really enjoying doing that. And aside from that, I just finished up a unit of, do you call it a unit if there's 4 of them, like 4 of them in a row? Minotaurs for my Chaos Army in 15mm. So that's coming along fine too. So getting a wee bit of painting done. And away from the painting table on the reading front, I finally got a copy of The Fundamentals of Tabletop Miniature Games Design, a Designer's Handbook by Mike Hutchinson and Glenn Ford. Really enjoyable book. I'd no doubt about the knowledge and tips and everything that would be in this book, given that I think I've listened to every single episode that they've done on the Rule of Carnage podcast, learned loads from that. So this is a great opportunity now to go back and, I dare say there'll be new insights that I'm not aware of in that book. It's a big chunky book, and it is like it's an academic book. That is literally its purpose. So it's not an easy reader. Like I've only been doing, I think, maybe a page or two per night, because I could keep on reading it, but you're aware when you're reading non-fiction, when you're reading something that's instructional, that you maybe keep on reading the words, but how much of it are you actually taking in? So I am making sure to not read on too much at night, and then I realise, I've read 5 or 6 pages, but how much have I actually taken from this or learned? So I'm doing it in a very sort of bite-sized way. So I'll do a couple of pages of that at night before bed, and then I always make sure to be reading fiction before bed, because I think it's the easiest way to kind of unwind. So I found a really good series. I know a lot of people are into the Barons War game just now, and the Barons War miniatures and that whole period, and I found a brilliant series of novels by Sharon Penman. So I'm on the second one of those just now. So this era is Eleanor of Aquitaine and King Henry II. So in the first book, he was just born, and we've moved forward. So he's the King of England just now, and this is very much in the origin period of the Barons' War. So not a period I knew much about, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert on it now just because I'm reading a novel in the period, but it seems to be that they, out of their kids, you've got Richard the Lionheart and Prince John, and of course fans of Robin Hood will know that they're 2 characters in the kind of background of the Robin Hood legends. So and this is kind of leading into this first Barons' War period. So really great novels. Like, aside from, if you're interested in that period or not, they're just very good novels. The good news for me is that I think there's quite a lot left in this series. It goes through the Barons' War period. We'll kind of jump through the generations and that. So the one I'm reading at the moment is called Time and Chance. But the first book, what was the name of that again? I'll just quickly look it up. It was called When Christ and His Saints Slept. So those books are by Sharon Penman, and I would highly recommend checking them out if you're in the market for some bedtime reading. I'd be remiss not to mention our question of the month. So we've got the question of the month running for July 2025, time of recording. So how would you reimagine a popular film or TV show with the miniature hobby at its core? So the example I gave here was Andy in Toy Story bringing home a whole new army, and all these existing unpainted armies and miniatures are pretty angry about this. And then thinking about Breaking Bad as well, instead of Walter White being a chemistry teacher going and cooking meth at night to fund his cancer treatment, we had him as an art teacher, and he starts to do commission paintings. So a couple of other titles that I'd given, it was 28mm Later or Honey, I Shrunk the Scale. So this is a bit of a fun one. I just want to hear your ideas for reimagining films or TV shows, but putting the miniature hobby at the core of the plot. This is everything that it kind of revolves around. So please get your clips in. I'd love to hear them. You need to get them in before Tuesday the 29th of July, and you could do so by going to bedroombattlefields.com/voicemail, and there's the recording software. You could record from your phone or whatever, just directly into that, and it sends it over to me automatically, or you could record a clip yourself and email it to me at hello@bedroombattlefields.com. Like I say, the deadline for that is Tuesday, the 29th of July, 2025. And I want to put out a final wee call on this episode too. Basically, I'm keen to hear from any listeners who are blind or have visual impairments. I'd love the opportunity to hear about your experiences, whether you're already involved in the hobby or are keen to get started, or you've got thoughts about accessibility in the miniature hobby in general. So if you want to get in touch about this, you could email me at hello@bedroombattlefields.com. And like I say, I'm genuinely curious to learn about your perspectives and any adaptations of approaches that you've discovered for making the most of this hobby. That email address again is hello@bedroombattlefields.com. Right, that seems to be just about it for my agenda. I've never been organised enough to have an agenda, but you know what I mean. Thanks as always for listening. Thanks to Glenn and the team at Warbases as well for having me round recently. And please do be sure to check out their range of terrain as well as their very excellent Bifrost miniatures range. See you later. Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then please do share it with someone else you think might enjoy it too. And be sure to check out our Discord community of like-minded hobbyists, which you could find at bedroombattlefields.com/Discord. It'd be great to see you in there.